This week, we've got questions on Papal States, pocket shrines, and Charles talks about alternative economic systems. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a pernicious Charles Coulombe.
Pernicious?
Pernicious, yes. Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just a continuing problem, an ongoing drain that can't be removed.
Was that the definition? The definition I'm reading is having a harmful aspect, especially in a gradual or subtle way.
That's what I'm saying. Is that what you're telling me? I have a harmful effect?
At times, yes. Yes, at times, yes.
I am here to drive out of the mental bloodstream of the United States, Europe, and the West. I am here to drive out the pernicious drivel that media, government, business, and education constantly pump into the collective mental bloodstream of the planet. So there.
Meanwhile, you champion some various controversial, some rather alarming causes. On your Twitter profile, you were in favor of Fall River's signature chow mein noodles back in production.
Yes.
Can
it's
you
a victory
yourself?
for mankind.
A victory for mankind.
Of evil. Yes, against the forces of evil.
I'm not going to. I'm going to show respect to our audience and not put a picture of a chow mein sandwich on the screen. I'm not going to do that to you. You can Google it, Google images, but at your own risk. Okay, at your own risk.
Hold on here. All right, the chow mein sandwich is one of God's great gifts to mankind. It is like manna
as a penance or something. As a penance?
No, it's like manna, like manna in the wilderness. It's like lembas, the way bread of the elves. And the more you come to rely on chow mein sandwiches, the more it strengthens the will.
This poison is leaching into your brain, Charles.
Let me tell you something. If Frodo and the other hobbits had chow mein sandwiches instead of lembas, they could have conquered Mordor all by themselves. And you heard it here first.
You know, I'd like to see who owns these establishments that are serving chow mein sandwiches. I'd like to see the owner. I bet Big Almond is behind all of it.
Oh, let me tell you something. Big Almond doesn't even have a foothold in Bristol County.
Oh yeah, right.
Big Almond wouldn't be seen dead from Fall River to New Bedford. Something
is rotten in Fall River.
No, not at all. Well, actually, I'll be when I'm buried there. So I guess that'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. No, in fact, you're talking big game now, smart guy. But at my funeral, after I've been put in the ground, and there's a meal of some kind to celebrate me, one of the dishes served will be Bristol County's finest. You will be able to belly up, and you'll know when you see right on your plate a chow mein sandwich. You'll hear my voice, and you'll say to yourself, I know Charles would want me to eat this. I think it's disgusting, but for him, I'll do it. And you'll take your knife and fork, and you'll cut in to that bun. And you'll spoon the deliciousness into your mouth, and you'll say, where have I been all my life? This is amazing. How could I possibly have denounced this little bit of heaven in a plate? That's what you'll say. And it will take my death for this to come about. You will feel guilty for the rest of your life. I don't want to see that. I want you to embrace chow mein sandwiches now so that instead of going, if only If only I'd listened to him. You go, wow, thank God I was able to share this joy with him in his last years. I think
This
I
is you know what I think you like is just the best thing about this from your perspective is that you get to guilt me from beyond the grave. It's like, oh well, he
well,
didn't eat the chow mein sandwich. What a
I don't want that
shame.
to happen.
I guess he
I'm
didn't
telling
care
you.
about Charles after all.
Exactly, but I don't want you to go through that. I want you to embrace your inner chow mein sandwich now, eat them now, so that you don't have to go through that. I don't want you to live the rest of your life feeling horribly guilty because you did me wrong.
Yes.
I want
You're
us.
already preheating the oven on that.
I want us to be able to share this tremendous joy while I'm alive to enjoy sharing it.
One man's treasure. Um,
And wait until you find yourself sitting at that table at the Chinese was it the Jade Garden Chinese restaurant in beautiful downtown New Bedford, and you find yourself surrounded by my kith and kin, all of them looking on at you eagerly to see the look on your face when you take one bite of that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful concoction. And then when you swallow just totally in seventh heaven, and they all slap you on your back and say, "Good man, but and you'll be like, "Why didn't I do this when he was alive?" I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to be able to share in my declining years one of the great joys of life.
I just right now that's a bridge too far, Charles. That's all I'll say right now. It's a bridge too far.
Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who live in Bristol County, and you know who you are because I know we do have some viewers who live there. Here's what I suggest we do. Since it's not practicable, now, as we all know, only the He Chow Company make the proper chow mein noodles for the lunch, which for the dish, which is why it was such a catastrophe when they ran out, and why it was such a victory for mankind when they got going underway again. It's not practicable to mail a chow mein sandwich to Vinny. That's beyond beyond. But what somebody could do is send him some of the noodles.
Don't send me noodles. Do not send me noodles. I do
Oh,
not.
there's a challenge. He's book for noodles. Now that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, you know what this is, Charles? You know what this is? It's malice. This is straight up malice on your part.
It's sharing treasures.
It's sadistic.
The first 5 people to send him a can of the noodles from New Bedford. Let me see. Hold on. Let's look and see what they actually sell. Because we don't want you sending a family economy size for you know uh hold on. Okay. Who me chow mein. Let me see. Oh, oh. Who me chow mein. The Oriental Chow Mein Company's signature gravy mix and chow mein noodles has become a staple. You're packaged for home preparation so you can make it yourself. Combine the gravy mix with the complimentary chow mein noodles for a dish made famous by the Fall River, Massachusetts area Chinese restaurants. So there are the bags of the noodles. Oh my hand! This. Oh, and look, there's a pound bag for $11.99. Oh man, this is great. And then the chow mein mix, 12. There's the gravy mix, 1 pound. So each of those is $11.99 a piece, $12, $24. Well, of course, you could send them a 48 pack for $159.99. I wouldn't do that. So I would send the gravy mix and the noodles, the bag of the one and the bag of the other. Yeah, the first 5 to send him a bag of each gets the book. Now, when this arrives in your domicile, what you're going to have to do is follow the instructions, because you're going to have to add vegetables and things like that, and of course the hamburger bun. But you will find what you've been missing your whole life. I am so happy for you.
Why would I need to put a hamburger bun over all that slop?
Well, that's like saying, why should I wear a hat with my beautiful suit? It's the way it's the way it works.
Okay. I guess I can see how you would have that perspective.
And if you want to know why you'd have the bottom of it, it's like wearing trousers with your beautiful suit.
Well, okay. Well, if people are gonna send me chow mein sandwiches, I mean, you're sending packages over here. You might as well send Charles some money as well with it, right? Kind of a 2-for-1 deal, if you will. So send, we're still taking in money for Charles over here. So he's way over in Austria. So go ahead and send us, checks for Charles and all that kind of stuff, and we'll take the chow mein sandwiches with the checks, and everything.
That sounds like you want to be bribed to eat the stuff.
No, what are you talking about? I'm just saying I'm a businessman and I'm operating. My mind is always, how can we make this more efficient?
Well, I'll tell you, it just out of curiosity, let me see. All right, so the Hu Mi Chow Mein. Cooking with Elise, a hometown tradition. Now, see, this lady, she knows what cooks. 1 pound Oriental Company chow mein noodles, that's 1 bag. 1 package of Hu Mi gravy mixture. Great. Then you've got what you'll have to have on hand, Vinny, 2 tablespoons of canola or vegetable oil, 1/4 pound 93% ground beef, a yellow onion sliced, 3 celery stalks, including the leaves, roughly chopped, and then 3.5 cups low sodium beef broth. Oh yeah, you'll need low sodium, all right. And that's not for health. It's because you need to offset the gravy. So this is beautiful. She says, before moving from Fall River, Mass to Poughkeepsie, New York, and then to Asheville, North Carolina, now Raleigh, North Carolina, I thought everyone had the same type of chow mein noodles. Wrong. I must say, however, that these are my favorite kind. See. So, and I'm looking at the bag. The bag, the bag will just tell you how to make the gravy. So, when you get let me know when you get your first shipment, and I will send this to you so you can make this at home.
This isn't going to happen, Charles. I don't like how you're saying, oh, okay, when we're down, we're on stage 10 of this process in which you're going to eventually cook and eat chow mein sandwiches, do this.
Yeah. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. And then you won't have this guilt when I croak. The downside will be you're pushing your way to the front of the line at that meal. My poor Tante Lisa will be pushed out of the way as you grab you grab a chow mein sandwich. Sorry, lady. Like that.
Can't it be something else? I mean, give me. What are the other oddities? I mean, give me Cincinnati chili instead. Am I right or am I right?
You're wrong. Cincinnati chili is fine in its way, but it doesn't beat chow mein sandwiches. The closest The closest second are the chop suey sandwiches served in the same part of the country.
Don't
And
you
let me
think
tell you
it's
something
strange
else.
that of the entire country, the only market for this is this obscure little area on the East Coast?
What are you talking about? Is the whaling capital of the world. Obscure. You ever read Moby Dick, smart guy? Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. That's right. Where's it? Where's the only stateside setting? You got it, New Bedford, Mass. Home of sour cream sandwiches. Sour cream, chow mein sandwiches. Sour cream sandwiches are entirely different and quite disgusting, especially when deep fried in lard.
Well, what did you say? Did you
I
say a sour
say,
cream sandwich that was deep fried in lard?
yeah, they're disgusting. I wouldn't touch them.
Are they emanating out of the same town? Maybe we need
No,
to.
no, no, no. You never find them in New Bedford. Never.
Why are you laughing? Is it literally? Is it literally the same place, Charles?
No, no, no. We don't have them. They don't exist in New Bedford or Fall River. But they're not one of my favorites. It's a Midwestern delicacy.
Okay, Midwestern delicacy. Okay.
They deep fry everything in the Midwest. They deep fry ice cream.
Yes.
They deep fry chunks of lard. That's really gross.
Okay. All right, let's move on to something else, shall we? I don't know. Let's talk about anything else.
Before we do, we've got to deal with the calendar.
Okay, let's calendar time. Here we go.
I love my little calendar girl every day of the year. January, we start the year off right. February, no? Is Sedaka back? Or was that just a phase we were going through?
I don't know what DACA is.
Sedaka, Neil Sedaka.
Neil Sedaka. I'm not familiar.
Really?
I mean, is he the person who sang that song? I know the song,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes, he sure is. But the Captain Tennille helped to make his comeback back in the 70s. And that was their motto back then. Sedaka's back.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's a, boomer thing, I guess. So,
Why are you attacking boomer culture?
I'm just identifying boomer culture. It's just simply identifying aspects of boomer culture de facto attacking.
Yeah, because it's implying that it is specific and pertains only to one generation instead of having a universal value for all places, times, and peoples.
Well, each thing has its proper place, no?
Some things are universal. I mean, it's like the Parthenon. That's got value for everybody, as opposed to Howard Johnson's.
What's wrong with Howard Johnson's?
Nothing, except they're not relevant to everything, everywhere, in all times and places, like the Parthenon. And by implying that the Parthenon is no bigger or greater than the Howard Johnson's, well, that's basically what you're doing when you attack boomer culture. You're saying, oh, it's only relevant for people who were alive back then, and it means nothing to us now, as opposed to being something of universal value for all people, everywhere, at all times.
What does the Parthenon do for me?
It was the center of Greek philosophy and mythology and so on and so forth.
It's just a building. It's just a building. The building didn't bring about that philosophy.
Nah, but all that took place there. That's why it's part of the UNESCO's World Heritage.
Okay. All right. Boomer culture equivalent to classical Greek civilization, I guess.
Yeah, or Shakespeare.
Okay.
Chaucer.
Okay.
Let me see. What else can I liken it to? Almost the Bible, Gothic architecture. Um, you know, um, pet rocks. Uh,
Oh, okay.
let me see. Victoria, La Victoria, Mexican foods.
Okay, we started somehow. Let's go back to the calendar. What's going on in the calendar, Charles? Anything
I'm glad
good?
you asked that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that question. Yes, right now, as we speak, it is the Vigil of Pentecost, which in the pre-54 calendar was like a mini Easter vigil, and very similar with the blessings and the prophecies and all that, because Pentecost is the third great feast of the year, and it was a favored time in the early church for baptisms and so on. So it has a very wonderful liturgy that was pretty much disposed of in 55. So for all you Restore the 54 fans, and I'm one of those, um, let's push to get it back. In the pre-show, we talked about how the secular side of Pentecost kind of collapsed in America. We speculated on how it might be restored. And one of the things is that in Europe, Whit Monday, just like Easter Monday or St. Stephen's Day after Christmas, is a holiday in most countries. And so that also implies the equality of the feast with the other two, Christmas and Easter. So do something for Pentecost, ladies and gentlemen. Do something for Pentecost. Pray to the Holy Ghost for inspiration and help for you, your families, your country, the church, anybody and everybody you're concerned about, for whatever reason at all. Pray for this show for the Holy Ghost. Literally, anybody and everybody and anything you're concerned about, or want to help, or want to protect yourself from, or whatever. It's a good time to pray to the Holy Ghost, and not just Easter Monday, but also Easter Tuesday, Whit Tuesday, even though it is no longer like Easter Tuesday, either a holy day of obligation or a holiday anywhere. Good time to pray to the Holy Ghost. Easter Tuesday this year is also June 10th, White Rose Day, the great feast day of the Jacobites. So break out those stirring songs, drink to the king over the water, wear the white rose, pray for the repose of the souls of Bonnie Prince Charlie and all the rest of the Stuarts. You can pray for the beatification of the servant of God, James II, and James III. No, James II, rather, and seventh, who was pushed out of the British Isles by his evil son-in-law. Pray for his beatification and that of his great-grandmother, Mary Queen of Scots. She's also a servant of God. And for that matter, for Charles I of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Get your inner steward on. And if you're an English speaker, regardless of your ethnicity, and regardless of whether you live in Britain, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa, if you're an English speaker, the House of Steward is a big part of who and what you are, whether you know it or not, especially if you're Catholic. So let all that hang out, as we would say back in the 60s. Yep. So that's what I got to say.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you to all the patrons who've supported us over the years. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so for as low as $5 a month. Get access to the pre-show. We just had like around a 40-minute pre-show. Get early access each week too. Get it before everyone else. So
could they do it in kind instead of cash?
In kind? What does that mean?
Well, they send you a gift, like, I don't know, maybe a a bag of chow mein noodles and a package of gravy mix.
Definitely not. The best we can do is free trials. If you want to just try out our Patreon free trial offer, there's also free membership too, I guess, in case we ever do public posts. So you can get on there for free as well. All right, let's move on. So I think, Charles, you wanted to talk about a news item a little bit. Obviously, the news item that's been dominating the headlines, which is the Trump and Elon feud. Charles, what do you think about this?
Lord save us all. It just, you know, the problem is everybody wants to see in the Trumpster either an arch villain or an arch hero. And a lot of people feel the same way about Elon Musk. But the truth is, they're both very flawed men with very flawed ethical stances, given their marital histories. Well, I mean, that's true. There was a time when you wouldn't be able to get elected dog catcher if you had the marriage record that they have.
No, I was laughing because you bring that up. I always think of someone on Twitter saying that Elon has the mating habits of Genghis Khan.
Well, well, if a man can't stick by his vows to his woman, how is he going to stick by them to a friend?
Right.
I mean, I couldn't begin to tell you which one of them is right or wrong, or whether they're both wrong or they're both right. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I do. What I do know is that to expect them to be true to one another and good friends through thick and thin, neither of them been able to do it with a wife. I don't see why they should be able to do it with a friend. And we know from past performance that Mr. Trump goes through associates, like, I don't know, like some people go through chow mein sandwiches, just, one after the other and toss the paper plate away. You'd be amazed how addictive those things are. Have one and suddenly you've eaten five, and you wonder how that happened. Well, that's how our friend Mr. Trump is with associates. He goes right through and then poof. I mean, you remember how he used to praise Mr. Pence, the VP.
Who used to praise? Oh, how Trump used to.
Yeah.
Right.
Trump, there's a pattern with him. For the immediate, the person of the moment is the greatest thing ever made. He's the biggest, the best, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they have a parting of the ways, he's the worst that ever was. Well, they can't both be true. And maybe neither of them are.
Do you think there's some sort of weird strategy there where it's like, I don't know, isolating your brand, or just sort of this hard negotiating where if you're with me, there's a lot of benefits. If you're against me, you get punished. I don't know.
Okay. I have no idea. I'm not gonna try to speculate. I mean, I have been attacked for being too pro-Trump. I've been attacked for being too anti-Trump. The truth is, I'm neither one. I don't know the man from Adam. There have been very few presidents I've lived under I've had any regard for.
Yeah.
People keep expecting. Part of it is the residue, I think, of the religion of the country, of the civic religion of America, in which, in many ways, the President of the United States was sort of the high priest. And there's still residues of that, in that people have expectations of such a person that a normal politician can't possibly fill. Even in countries where they separate the head of government from the head of state, like Austria, Germany, Portugal, and you have this aged politician as the president and symbol of national unity. Nobody takes that seriously. And if they act up and annoy the head of government, they're out of a job. So it's the situation we have now is endemic to the Republican form of government. There's no way around it. And if you don't like it, well, too bad. But I mean, by his very nature, the President of the United States is president of the people who voted for him. That's his constituency, not the whole country. It was the same under Obama. It was the same under Reagan. It was the same under Carter. It's just the way it is. Some of them are more party men than others, but even a real loyal party man is not really keeping his eye out necessarily for the good of the whole country, save where that good may benefit the party. Theoretically, having the country, go to pieces would not benefit the party. But I don't think they even look at parties the way they used to. Certainly neither the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party stand for anything today.
I always have Bob Hope's line, right? Like the older I get, the more I feel like that's true. Where he says a
No
political.
one,
Yeah, go ahead,
no
Charles.
one party can fool all the people all the time. That's why we have two.
Yeah.
And basically, the people who aren't fooled are the people whose party is out of power. But just you wait. As soon as their man gets in, they'll swallow the drug, and suddenly their former opponents or their present opponents who are now out of power will suddenly understand things with crystal clarity until their man gets in again. Then they'll take the drugs, and the others will be be it AA.
Hmm.
I mean, it truly, politics are the opium of the people, not religion.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in this area before we move on?
Well, I just think that love will keep us together. All you need is love. Love is always right. End the stalking laws.
Agreed. All right.
All right.
Moving on. Question from John, who says, "Could Charles explain what life would be like in the Papal States at the height of its power?"
Ooh. Well, of course, then you've got to define what the height of its power would have been. Because the Papal States were around for a very long time, from roughly more or less the 600s, 500s, 600s, until 1870. And they went through enormous changes and ups and downs. So why don't we say about 1830? Because that was when the papacy came the closest to having a centralized government over the Papal States. Now, it wasn't a very rich country. There were Rome, of course, was, but that was because of the pilgrims, really, more than anything else. There was a rigid censorship, so you didn't have any pornography, you didn't have anything anti-papal published legally, anything anti-Catholic. The canon law was the law of the land, so there was no divorce. Uh, you had capital punishment for theft and for murder and so on, but pardons were relatively easy to get. Mm. It was a very lackadaisical administration. They were not. There were clerics at the top of everything, and they were not what you would call very dynamic individuals. But having a dynamic individual running your province or your town is not always a good thing. But it's a sort of counterbalance to them were the Roman nobility, who until 1848 still had a lot of fiefs scattered throughout the Papal States, and were both major, in a sense, a counter to the clerical administration, but also a great supporter of it at the same time. Education was in the hands of the church, and on the average, the clerics were better educated than the laymen, although that wasn't true of the nobility. But it's a fairly well-run place, if not very efficient, but not overwhelmingly painful either. If you've got a government that's extremely efficient at smacking its citizens around, okay, it's efficient. But if it's not, then that's much more pleasant to live under.
Okay, may Charles discuss the history of pocket shrines? Should this Catholic practice come back?
Well, in terms of a real history, I'd be hard put to give it to you, except to say that pocket shrines have been around probably as long as the church has been in one form or another. In a sense, both the old holy picture in the wallet and the scapular around your neck are sort of kind of related to it. In other words, the idea of having a bit of the faith that's tangible and with you at all times. So, is it worth reviving? Yeah, sure. Anything that helps you practice the faith in a more complete way is a good thing. Mutatis mutandis, St. Louis Marie de Montfort described going out with your scapular around your neck and your rosary in your pocket as wearing Our Lady's livery. Well, I think you could make a similar case about pocket shrines, depending on who they're of. But that's certainly a good idea. I mean, it can't hurt. Just make sure you get them blessed.
I think they're definitely going to become popular because they are able to be so ornate, and just looking at them online, I feel they're very evocative. There's a little I have one I got from EWTN. I'm not sure what you'd call it. It's a little I think you'd call it a triptych, which is you've got two panels that fold in, and I think it's made of pewter or something like that. But just these little these beautiful little whether it's woodworking or something else, they're really evocative, I think. And I think that's what you're kind of shooting for.
Yeah.
Such a thing,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you pull it out, you look at it, and suddenly your mind is focused on that.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, not a bad thing to have. I mean, a pocket shrine is just that, a shrine in your pocket. And you can't always be wandering around with holy cards and statues and pictures, but you can't have that.
All right. I read that our Blessed Mother Mary lived her final years in Provence in Saint Maximin la Saint Baume. Could Charles speak to the historical basis of this belief? Are there any accounts or local traditions that paint a picture of what her life might have been like there, her daily activities, or any spiritual influence she had?
I've never heard of Our Lady going to Provence. All I know of is they're going to Ephesus. However, a large number of saints that were associated with her, St. Mary Magdalene, her sister, St. Margaret, their brother, St. Lazarus, St. Maximin, St. Mary Magdalene's maid, St. Sarah, are all believed to have gone to Provence. And there are traditions that, and they brought the body of St. Anne, the grandmother of our Lord, with them to Provence. Not intended. They were in a ship that got blown off course and ended up basically coming ashore in Provence. There are a lot of towns there that have traditions of their adventures there. And in fact, if memory serves, and it might, there is a website on the Saints of Provence. Let me see if I can find a good introduction to it. Let me see. Yeah, I mean there are a number of here we go. A to Z Saints and Martyrs in Provence. No, this is general. Here we go. Yeah, Chemin de Saint de Provence, the roads of female and male saints of Provence. Let us walk in the path of Marie Madeleine and the first Christians. And so I think this will probably, let me just give another quick look to see something a bit more. I mean, there is the Sanctuary of La Sainte-Baume, which is where Mary Magdalene hung out, for want of a better word. Yeah. Oh, this will do. I'll give it to you. I'll give you this thing, but you'll need your friend Google Translate. Sorry about that, but I don't have a choice. Without Google Translate, I got nothing.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
All right. I'll make that available to the people in the description of the video. All right. Next question is from Vendée Radio, who says, "Dear Charles, why do you think the interwar period was such a fertile time for alternative economic systems, more often than not promoted by Catholics? For example, distributism, corporatism, solidarism, and social credit."
Well, you got to remember that by 1914, with the exceptions of Austria-Hungary and Spain, most of the countries of Europe were operating according to liberal principles. That's the first thing. Catholicism was certainly being pursued by the French government in 1914, not in a nice way. Same in Italy, we had the Roman question. Germany, you had a couple of Catholic states, but the German emperor was the whole setup was a liberal one. Austria-Hungary, the liberals were powerful, although not utterly in control. Russia and the Orthodox countries were a small minority. Portugal had just had an anti-clerical revolution. So, and then in Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and so forth, we were definitely in a secondary position. So, that pattern seemed unchangeable. We were locked in this thing. All right, 1918. It's a terror. You've got the Russian Revolution and the emergence of the communist threat. You have the destruction of the last really Christian government in Europe, Austria-Hungary, last major Christian government in Europe. Spain would follow in 1931, of course, but anyway, and then on top of that, on top of the destruction of the liberal order, the rise of communism, and then you have the Great Depression. Well, these three things are enormous challenges, but they're also opportunities to alternative theorists. I mean, one of the reasons in my day, there were virtually no American monarchists. Now there are a ton of them. Why? Well, because when I was young, the United States, as they were, seemed immovable, all powerful, unchangeable. They had begun to decay and divide. And so alternative ideas are now more thinkable than when the dominant order is completely dominant. Well, in the interwar era, you had that enormous breakdown, and you had a succession of popes who, regardless of the efficacy or otherwise of their actions, wrote some extraordinary responses to what was going on. Benedict XV and Pius XI wrote some, and in retrospect, Leo XIII wrote some masterful responses to the challenges of the modern world. So out of this mixture of horrific challenge from the communists, of opportunity given by the breakdown of the liberal order in World War I, and immediately after, and the necessity thrust upon everyone by the Depression, what we have has failed. Other alternatives. And so people ran around trying to come up with alternatives, and boy, did they ever. A way that is not the failed liberal capitalism, nor the horrific communism. We want a third way that will somehow get us between those two horrors that have given us this depression and have murdered so many people in terms of communism. So how do we do that? Well, we try to rediscover eternal principles, either based on the faith or human nature or both. We try to examine modern life, the modern economy, the modern political structure, and see how to apply those principles, if we can discover them, to modern life. And the rest of it, well, this is what you get. So Major Douglas comes up with social credit, no Bräuning and what's his name with solidarism. GK and Bellick had already got distributism, and there was already guild socialism in the air. Corporatism, of course, came from a variety of thinkers, von Vogelsang in Austria and de la Tour du Pin in France, both of them before World War I, but sort of came to a head with Pius XI and Quadragesimo Anno, which was also animated by solidarism and was seized upon by the guild socialists and the distributists. And the social credit people were vaguely sympathetic. So you end up with the optimum conditions for creativity in this area. And of course, a lot of people, having lost faith in liberalism, look to Catholicism as a way to regain what everyone, or well, most people anyway, perceived to have been lost by the West. So, in a nutshell, that's what I think happened. It was important, though, that the major theologians and hierarchs of the church really believed in the church and in Catholicism. Because in a weird way, you had a similar thing occur after World War II, and particularly in the 60s. But then the situation of the church hierarchy was very different.
Why do you think none of these alternative economic systems really got traction? Or even sort of, I guess, their principles were not even really incorporated into our existing systems. Like, for example, one of my big pet peeves is sort of mergers and acquisitions in the United States, and
Mhm.
how, I mean, these giant companies like Google, Amazon, so many of these different companies. I mean, if you actually look at their public financial statements, they've got absolutely hundreds and hundreds of acquisitions until they turn into this behemoth,
Yeah.
and have these crushing economies of scale. And I always wished that there was a little bit more sort of distributive principles in here, where for the common good, we say, okay, you're done. You can't buy out anyone else anymore. Your market valuation is 3 trillion. I think we can stop now.
Well, to answer your question, 2 words: World War III, World War II.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. Basically, the United States was struggling with the Depression, and the New Deal actually did not get us out of the Depression. It was a palliative. It was very decorative. It produced some interesting literature, architecture, and music, and all that. But in terms of getting the country out of the Depression, it was a total failure. What got us out of the Depression was our entry into World War II. Now, as a result of World War II, all of these sorts of thinkers in Europe, from Ireland to Poland, Russia, of course, being Soviet and communist, the war presented them with two possibilities. They could ally with the Nazis and be discredited and destroyed as collaborators, or they could join the resistance alongside liberals, communists, socialists, etc., and be basically reduced to irrelevance by the aftermath of World War II. And what was the aftermath? Well, the aftermath of World War II was the imposition on Europe of a Soviet-American diarchy. Half the continent was ruled by the Soviets, the other half dominated by the Americans. So what did that mean? Well, it meant that anything in the Western sphere that was too anti-American, too unlike us, couldn't be tolerated. And what do I mean by that? Well, as those who followed me at any rate know, it seems to me that all these systems we've been discussing, generally speaking, and some of their pre-World War I forerunners, had 5 points in common: altar, throne, what we would call subsidiarity, what we would call solidarity, and then the notion of Christendom as the vague enveloping thing of all of them, the Reichsidee, or call what you want. Now, the problem for people like that after the war, if they had sided with the resistance, was that in the Soviet area, they were simply destroyed. In the American area, the only things we would permit of those 5 points was subsidiarity and solidarity, because they were not a threat to the American view of things. There's no way we could go for altar and no way we could go for throne or permit it. So Christian democracy emerged, which basically were the locals arguing for the two things they were allowed to push for. And they did. And to some degree, they were successful. But people like de Gaulle and Adenauer and Schumann had been very active in these sorts of movements before the war, before World War II. After the war, they had to go along that somewhat limited path. Then you had 1968, which is a watershed year in Europe, because basically it was the discrediting entirely of the World War II generation. And their replacement, not immediately, but with what we would call the senior boomers in the States. But there's a big difference between the generation of 68 and the boomers. The senior members of the senior boomers were raised with a level of wealth that had not been seen in the United States ever. And they grew up as kind of spoiled children. Well, they didn't grow up exactly, but they aged into spoiled children. And they've remained that ever since. But the generation of 68, and of course they whined about it. You know, they resented very much mommy and daddy doing what they had done for them. In the generation of 68, however, had grown up looking for scraps in the ruins of World War II. Now, because the vast majority of people to a greater or lesser degree collaborated with the occupiers, not unlike the vast majority of people in our time to a greater or lesser degree collaborate with the infanticide regime. You know, we all do. And if in 50 years young people felt the way people did 50 years ago about abortion, and if I was still alive and some kids said, so what did you do against it? I'd be hard put to say much. Same. The generation of 68 guilted their parents very heavily. And now, of course, they're in charge over here. At least the younger members. The older ones haven't gone to that place where it don't rain or snow. Anyway, so to answer your question, that's why American-style capitalism survived because of World War II and because of the aftermath. The Cold War was exported and became the state church in Western Europe as well and elsewhere in the world. So there we are.
All right. Final question is from Pierre, who says, I've noticed that the more I pray, the more I want to pray. Have you and Charles noticed this as well?
It's funny how that works. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's habit. You know, the more you get into it, the more you want to. And of course, the other thing is you get used to being in a realm that is not petty or ordinary or dragged down. You know, you think you're the objects of your prayer. Our Lord, Our Lady, the saints. I mean, it's a much better company than you're going to get otherwise. That's for sure. Even better company than me. I'm sorry to break the news, but so yes, it certainly is habit forming, and it's a good addiction to develop.
All right, that's gonna do it for this episode, everyone. Oh, by the way, just a quick request for everyone. Keep my mom in your prayer intentions. I just got a call. Literally, the scene break that you just saw is because I just got a call from the hospital regarding my mom. She was in a head-on collision. Seems like she's relatively okay, I guess. But keep my mom and my brother in your prayers, please. I'm actually going to go to the hospital right now. But yeah.
Well, that having been said, I'll ask you a question.
Yes.
What is it if it's Monday, even Whit Monday?
It's off the menu.
And what about the soul you save?
It may be your own.
God bless you all. See you next week.